How would it feel to own a private jet? Not having to go through the hassle of flying commercial and also being able to fly anywhere you wish to go at any time with a quick call and a drive to your hangar. Most people forget that to be able to do this, you'd also have to take into account maintenance costs, renting spaces for your jet, and, of course, paying for the jet itself. Welcome to Level Up, the place where ambitious people come to turn their dreams into reality. Today, we'll be talking about the real price of owning a jet. We'll describe the average costs of buying a jet, maintenance and alternatives for you to understand what it means to be a private jet owner. And now that you're here, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on your notifications to keep receiving more amazing luxury and lifestyle content like today's video. Buying a jet can be quite expensive. Keeping a jet in top-notch shape to fly whenever you need to also has some heavy costs many owners don't factor in before making their purchase. Despite what many believe, most people that own jets are actually on the older side of statistics. There are only about 11,000 private jet owners in the United States. The average age of a jet owner is 63.6 years old, with a net worth of over $1.5 billion. And even more impressive is that with the massive cost of a private jet, most jet owners spend just 1% of their net worth on the jet. So for most of them, a private jet isn't a huge investment. Let's begin by talking about the price of jets. Depending on your budget, age, or size of the aircraft, the initial purchase price can vary tremendously. It's also important to note that most jet owners switch planes every 4 to 5 years, much like car owners. A private jet can cost anywhere from $3 million to $90 million. Ongoing expenses include flight crew salaries and expenses, the costs of routine maintenance and unforeseen repairs, hangar rental, and aircraft insurance. An important thing you should know is that, precisely due to depreciation, it's a much smarter investment to buy a second-hand or used jet than buying a new one up front. In fact, despite popular belief, most of the wealthiest people in the world who happen to own their own private jets don't splurge. They buy a used jet from the manufacturers to avoid depreciation. Most people at that level of wealth tend to have a very tight control over their finances and savings, thus the smarter decision here is to go ahead and buy a used jet. That's not to say that you can't go ahead and splurge on a new one if your heart desires and your wallet allows you to do so, but it's the same as with cars. The instant they go out of the manufacturer's hands, their price will steadily drop. Though second-hand jets are cheaper, they still cost millions of dollars. For perspective, the Gulfstream G650ER, a mid-tier business jet, costs a staggering $66.5 million with a range of about 7,500 miles of range. With extras and customization, the price can soar to hundreds of millions of dollars. On the cheaper side of the case, aircraft broker Conklin and DeDecker says that an older Global Express with a range of over 5,900 nautical miles can be had for $8.3 to $14 million. A 2006 Gulfstream G550 can also be bought at $17,950,000. Elon Musk, CEO of SpaceX and Tesla, has a 2015 $70 million Gulfstream G650ER business jet, which was a brand new plane on the higher end of the scale. The additional costs associated with owning a private jet include insurance, fuel, pilots, and catering services. Unless you're a skilled pilot yourself, which kind of defeats the idea of using your private jet to relax and spend time working on other things while you're up in the air, your jet isn't going to fly itself. We haven't achieved that level of technology yet available to the public, so you're going to need a pilot for it. For those who are interested yet don't seem to match this profile, get ready to calculate the additional costs of your jet, because they will add up with every year that passes. The fuel tank prices, for example, depending on the model and size of the aircraft. It also heavily relies on the number of passengers it can hold and the distance of the flight. And filling a private jet with fuel is definitely not the same as fueling a standard car. Planes with larger fuel tanks for long-range intercontinental flights require a very high amount of fuel. Some planes can even cost you up to $50,000 every time you refuel the tank. We'll proceed to break down the minimum prices of each of the private jet editions. Maintenance and repair costs depend on the size of the aircraft, but typically range from $700,000 to $4 million per year. When we talk about insurance, the hull value will determine the amount of premiums you will pay. The average going rate is 14% of the hull value. The accepted standard liability is $200 million, but this will slightly vary depending on the age of the aircraft, type of ownership, and the aircraft use. For comparison, a $10 million jet will have an annual insurance premium of $30,000. Hangar prices can vary in their costs depending on the location, but most of them will have costs of around $3,000 to $5,000 a month. On average, it could be around $36,000 to $60,000 a year. You'll require a captain and co-pilot for your jet too. Since these are paid employees, you can expect them to charge around $300,000 to $350,000 for their yearly salaries and benefits. The costs add up if you also fly with a flight attendant. When talking about fuel, the lighter the jet, the less fuel it will burn. For every hour the plane flies, the less the fuel consumption. You should set aside at least $2.5 million for its yearly operating cost depending on the plane size. At an airport, de-icing fluid is sprayed onto the private jet by a specially designed vehicle called a de-icing rig. Actual de-icing costs vary on the amount of fluid required. The average de-icing cost for a small jet is $1,500 per application. De-icing larger aircrafts can cost over $10,000. Let's take a hypothetical case, for example. At the very least, considering the bare minimums of all these costs, a private jet owner of a $10 million plane can expect to pay around $3,530,000 a year, excluding de-icing costs, as these largely depend on the season and the country the private jet owner lives in. If it's a particularly tropical or an arid country, then this shouldn't be much of a problem. That's also excluding costs for spare parts, as jets require windshields and new tires the same way a car would. A Boeing 737 main tire, of which there are 4 per aircraft, costs around $1,500 each, while a windshield can cost $3,000 or higher, depending on the model and size. Next, let's look at the circumstances under which it would be worth it to afford your own private jet. Most aircraft company owners claim that if you spend around 150 to 200 hours a year at the very least, you shouldn't even be thinking of buying a private jet. Renting one or even flying commercial would be even wiser, but we'll go ahead and compare each of the alternatives later. Other people even think on a bigger scale, claiming that you should only buy a private jet if you fly a minimum of 350 to 400 hours a year. If that's your case, then buying a private jet is a worthy investment for the long term. It will save you the time, effort, and long-term cost of having to fly commercial every time, and the amenities that come included in your own personal, customized flying space will be worth it. However, you might find that even though you don't reach those hours per year, you are always accompanied by associates during your flights. Since commercial flights charge per seat, you may find that paying for those trips costs you more than owning a jet. There are several other flying options that you may be interested in. You have the option of chartering a jet, which is much more expensive than flying commercial, but still costs much less than buying your own. Chartered flights are charged by the hours spent in the air, and the prices vary depending on the size, model, length of flight, and number of people on board. You might have to spend around $1,674 and $8,640 per hour to charter a private jet. Renting a jet for an entire weekend can cost around $100,000 or more, but when divided by the number of passengers in the jet, it might be a good deal. Though only if your associates were okay with footing part of the bill for whatever purpose they might have. For example, executive board members in a company trip might choose this option instead of buying a private jet. Finally, there is an option of signing up for a private jet club by investing in a charter flight membership. In these clubs, you only pay for a seat on a plane instead of renting it. Of course, that's a lot of money anyway. Look at Wheels Up, a a private jet club company in which members are charged around $3,000 to $30,000 to join and have access to their shared flights. Though clubs are like resorts in that they include many advantages, discounted deals for family or guest passes, plus also the privacy of knowing who you're flying with. Would you be willing to spend that much for a private jet? Or is the cost pocket change for your finances? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to leave us a like, share this video with your friends, and subscribe to our channel to receive more amazing videos like today. We hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.